I feel that we're way more deeply influenced by our past, by our programming, than we actually realize. And no matter how much we think we've overcome, no matter how much we think we've healed through our blockages, no matter how much we expand our consciousness, raise our awareness, no matter how much I think I break through barriers of blockages and limitations and constructs, I find that I'm often revisited by some aspect of my past. No matter how far ahead on your journey you actually are, you are revisited by a trigger, whether that trigger is on a conscious or a subconscious level. Something happens and it triggers some aspect of your past. And whenever you entertain it on any level, emotionally, physically, through action or through thoughts, mentally, it immediately imprints on your outer world. Once you feel triggered and you react through your past version, you start feeling resentful to life. You know you start reacting through survival mode. You go into that victim mentality. You start fearing that your future might just be a recreation of your past, that you're gonna end up failing once again, that you're gonna end up getting hurt once again. Once you start feeding this past, this aspect that was triggered with a new energy through emotions, actions, or thoughts, which all ultimately feed into your belief system, you will find that your reality quickly follows that construct as if it's the truth. The more you feel resentful to life, the more you explore life, you experience life through the past version of yourself, the more it's gonna actually become your past. The more your past, you're gonna realize that your past is about to be recreated once again, and you are just going around within a pattern. And so whenever something happens and then you want to go into survival, shut yourself out, isolate yourself, cut people out of your life, and go again into that mentality that sure, once this happens, once I overcome this aspect, then I'm gonna go back to my purpose, then I'm gonna go back to feeling good or feeling happy or feeling motivated to actually follow through with whatever I'm doing. And you just know you start relying heavily on your coping mechanisms, and you want to avoid your life all over again, you know whether through actions, emotions, or thoughts. Once again, it all matters. Once you do this, I found that it immediately imprints on my external reality. And it's also because the more you progress in your journey, the further ahead on your journey you actually are, the quicker your manifestations actually take place. It's like the higher your awareness, the more you're able to manifest whatever reality is within you through your higher consciousness into this outer world, into this external reality. So it's like you've committed, you've built energy, and now once you fall back to your old self, it quickly readapts to that old version of you. Life quickly readapts because now you are a conscious creator. You now have more energy within you to create the life you want, to create the life you have inside of you. And whenever that life within you becomes that of the past, then it's going to be recreated in your outer reality. But also because I think it's like a signal, it's like a pact you've made with yourself. It's like however you want to consider it, it's like God or the universe or just yourself through your higher consciousness forcing yourself to stay committed. I feel like I've created this dichotomy within my mind, within my head, within my essence, that if I ever, get out of the way, that if I ever start falling back into my old self, I quickly want to create a reminder in my outer reality. I quickly want to create a nudge in my external reality to trigger me to go back to my, to my higher version, to re-embrace, to be reminded, to stay on path, to stay focused, to stay committed, and trust the process. And that is happening through me through me actually creating some external discomfort. Whenever I start falling into my old self, I automatically create a discomfort. I manifest through my higher consciousness a discomfortable experience, an uncomfortable experience in my outer reality that makes me, you know, remember to actually embrace my new self, to actually act upon the new version of myself, the higher version of myself, which is trusting, which is loving, which is committed, which is not fearful, which knows that everything is happening for it, not against it. And it's also because the higher you go on your purpose, the higher you go on your path to awakening, to enlightenment, to meaning, to fulfillment, to freedom, to bliss, the more you actually need to unblock, the more of yourself you need to heal. It's like, to just get started with something, you're required to unblock certain aspects. You're required to heal through some of your aspects, through some, through the deepest of, through some deep blockages, and then that gets you started. You overcome some of your limitations, and that gets you started, and then you're stuck in that phase of, the in between. You started something new, you adopted your new self, you adopted your higher self, but you're not progressing yet further with it. And the problem is that we tend to get stuck in this, because once we get started, we think that we've overcome everything, and now, it's gonna work out for us because we followed our intuition, we took that initial risk, we took that initial leap of faith, and so everything should actually work out so effortlessly. But the thing is, the blockages you heal through this part of your programming that you recode to actually get started is different, is just one aspect of your programming, is different from the programming that you need to recode through and the blockages you need to heal through in order for you to make it through whatever you started in. Whether it's something you're trying to make a living out of your purpose, you're trying to become successful in something, just getting started in it is different than becoming successful. Or whether that relationship that you got into it, you attracted it, but then it started getting all of those problems and stuff happening within it, and that's because there's that in order for it to work out, in order for that business to work out, in order for you to make a living out of your purpose, there are some deeper level of blockages that you need to heal through. There's always going to be another step, there's always going to be another step. The only thing is that you become more adapt to it, that you become more efficient in actually healing and understanding that challenges are always gonna arise on your path, and that it's okay, and you will continue, that you're gonna stay committed to yourself, that you are gonna fulfill the promises you made to yourself. And then the one time, or the few times you actually act differently, react differently, rather than, whenever that trigger happens in your life and you choose to act upon it through your new self, you don't get that ill-tempered quickly, you don't get back into survival mode, you don't get resentful and despiteful and hateful and angry, and you don't go into the victim mentality once again, but choose to approach it, address it through your higher self, through the version you are committed to now. That also quickly imprints on your outer world, in your external reality. I'm remembered by this, one of my dark night of the soul. It was the quickest the fastest dark night of the soul that I've been through. It's not the fastest dark night, but it's like the way I look at any dark night of the soul is that it has a peak. It's all an uncomfortable experience. It's all a very challenging experience, perhaps sometimes traumatizing, but there's always a peak to it. And this time I find myself remembered by this time in which I actually overcame that peak the fastest. And that's because throughout that peak, whenever, and this time, that dark night of the soul, that experience actually started with its peak. That's either a good thing or a bad thing. So fortunately or unfortunately, it started with its peak. Sometimes it starts mildly and then it follows through the peak, and then back mildly until it reaches the climax or its dissolution. But with this one, it started with the peak, and the moment it started, the thing is, when a dark night of the soul starts with the peak, you are already coming not from a place of threat and not from a place of survival. You are, but like it's different than when you've been through a dark night of the soul for some time and then it reaches its peak. So you're already broken, you're already that desperate. But when it starts with its peak, it's sometimes you are functioning through your previous version, which was perhaps a little bit happier, a little bit more content, fulfilled, and you still have that energy within you. And that time I did not react to that dark night of the soul, to that peak, through any of my past versions, through any of my blockages, through any of my negative self-beliefs, through any of my self-limiting beliefs, but rather I found myself feeling, thinking, and acting. There was not much act to it. There's not much action to be taken actually through it, but it's just feeling and thinking through it so positively, so unlike me, so unlike my past self, so unlike, my broken self. And that was the fastest peak I've went through. The peak just ended within 4 days. Then the dark night of the soul, it stayed, of course, for some time. But it's because my emotions did not go back into victim mentality, did not fall into survival mode. My thoughts were, that of the future. I know I'm not aligned with this kind of reality I'm going through, this kind of experience that's happening to me, or that's happening for me. I know that I'm not aligned with its negativity, but it's just there for a positive lesson. It's just there to help me overcome some aspect of myself that's limiting me from my grand intention, that's limiting me from living through my purpose. And this was the perfect alignment. This was all in perfect alignment. My emotions and my thoughts were both in that direction. And that reminds me, in my last two videos, I spoke about, when your thoughts and your feeling, your emotions and your actions are all aligned, they're all a one-point focus, which means you are in full alignment to a specific aspect, towards a certain thing. That's when magic starts happening. That's when you're able to create miracles. That's when you're able to break through, to become an instant manifester, to become an instant creator. But the thing here is, whenever you're visited by an aspect of your past, once you change one of those specific aspects, whether you change the way you react emotionally, the way you react mentally, or the way you react externally, physically, through action, you start recoding this pattern. You start signaling that you are overcoming this pattern, and you don't need it recreated in your life once again. And you find that quickly, that once you react differently, once you feel differently, so you're not back into survival mode, you're not back into victim mentality, it starts imprinting on other aspects. So once you change the emotions or the actions, it changes simultaneously the thoughts and the emotions, or the actions and the thoughts, whatever aspect, but you have to change one of those aspects. And then you are sending a signal that I've overcome this. I'm not gonna react through this the same as my old self. And once that happens, it means that this pattern has no need to be recreated in your life. And that you're only gonna overcome it and, progress further ahead, unblock, heal through whatever blockages it had created within you. But all you gotta do is react differently, feel differently, think differently. And that's you signaling that you are fully committed, that you are all in that newer version of yourself, that you're all in that higher version you've become, and the promises in your vision to the future. You prove that you are committed to that. You prove the energy, the signal you send is very powerful, and it bends reality to your will. Once you take that leap, once you change that thing, once you choose to act differently, react differently, think, feel differently, now reality, your external reality, is gonna bend to this powerful will within you to not react according to your past, to not react out of blockages, out of survival, out of trauma, out of victimization, but rather out of your newer, higher self. And so let this be a reminder to go all in. Thank you so much for tuning in to another video by AF's Conscious Frequency and sharing this with me. I'm truly grateful to have all of you lovely infinite beings. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, because it helps me so much and it helps this video find its way to many more others who might actually need it.